and all things end, and all that we intend is scrawled in sand. It slips right through our hand, and just knowing that everything will end, we should not change our plan.
Life is pleasant. Death is peaceful. It's the transition that's troublesome.
It is said that your life flashes before your eyes just before you die. That is true. It's called life.
To the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure.
Do not fear death so much, but rather the inadequate life.
Death smiles at all of us. Only the brave smile back.
Death is not the opposite of life, but a part of it.
There is a sacredness in tears. They are not the mark of weakness, but of power. They speak more eloquently than 10,000 tongues. They are the messengers of overwhelming grief, of deep contrition, and of unspeakable love.
If there was anyone to ever get through this life with their heart still intact, they didn't do it right.
Grief is not a disorder, a disease, or a sign of weakness. It is an emotional, physical, and spiritual necessity. The price you pay for love. The only cure for grief is to grieve.
Do you think I'd give up, that this might have shook the love from me, or that I was on the brink? How could you think, darling, I'd scare so easily? Now that it's done, there's not one thing that I would change. My life was a storm since I was born. How could I fear any hurricane? If someone asked me at the end, I'd tell them, put me back in it. Darling, I would do it again.
There is a medicine story that tells of Crow's fascination with her own shadow. She kept looking at it, pecking at it until her shadow woke up and became alive. Then Crow's shadow ate her. Crow is dead Crow now. Join us as we attempt to look through the wandering crow's eye to find the gateway to the supernatural, to seek to know the unknowable mysteries of creation. Welcome to the Wandering Crow Podcast. Hello, murderers. This is Mandy.
And this is JT.
And this is Cameron.
And Abby is wrangling her dogs. She'll be here in a little bit.
And this is Abby.
Very well done, Karen. Perfect.
Nobody knows.
They would never tell the difference. We're going to just make sure that we have plugged all of our social media stuff because we're trying to defeat the algorithm. So we have our Instagram account, The Wandering Crow Podcast. We have an email account, which is wanderingcrowpodcast at gmail.com. Then we have a website, which is thewanderingcrow.com.
It has a functional phone number, and the email address is on there.
Please believe the bio.
Just don't use. Yeah, don't use the direct messaging on the website. We have no idea where that goes.
Also, we did not have the functioning email prior to, so there are a lot of potentially subscribers and potentially people have been emailing us via the website. Up till now, we were not receiving those. So if you sent us an email through the website and you didn't get a response from us, it's because it wasn't working then. Go ahead and try again now. We have fixed that.
But again, don't use the email function or the contact us section that's on there. Contact that website or the email directly, or just text that phone number.
Yeah.
Those work, just not through the website.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get that function.
Or just email us directly at wanderingcrowpodcast@gmail.com.
Yes. Or text.
Or text.
You can take the text.
That's cool. So,
Or call,
let's see.
leave a message. That works too.
Email us, send us messages, voicemail Cameron, that's totally cool. Then, like our content. Eventually, we also have a Facebook page. We have a, what's it called? Discord. All of that stuff you can find in the show notes. So if you want to reach us, it's all in the show notes. So with that
If
out
you
of the
want to
way.
be a moderator,
Oh,
we
yeah.
need those.
We do like that. Come on, join the team. Okay, moving on. So today's episode is about The process of dying. That's what I will be entitling this episode. We've talked about it a lot. I say it all the time. Cameron has made fun of me for this. I am a nurse and I work in hospice now. And I've been a nurse for close to 15 years now. I think we're on to 14 years. So I've been around a lot of death and dying even before I became a hospice nurse. The reason we wanted to do this episode is because I have had some times where I've actually lost sleep and felt compelled to record some of my feelings and my thoughts about specific cases at work that were really upsetting for me. And I was encouraged by a friend to publish those and let people hear them because, in his words, that might be something somebody needs to hear. There might be something about those that somebody needs to hear. So we wanted to allow an opportunity to segue into that so those can kind of make a little bit of sense. I probably won't do it very often. And there's going to be at least one story that uses specific languaging, which is sort of unique to hospice workers, that wanted to kind of get this out of the way so it's easier to understand those stories that come. In fact, the very next episode, Haunted Arizona, Part 2, has a story from a friend of mine who works in hospice. So wanted to make sure that we kind of get that out of the way. Then we're also planning on doing an episode about near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences. And we thought this would be a really good way to segue to that as well. So all of that said, any thoughts or questions, friends?
Okay. What context has Cameron made fun of you for being a nurse?
She brings it up all the time.
Oh.
In case you didn't know.
Like it's a little humble brag or something?
I just obsessively feel like I need to provide that context every time.
You know what? Fair enough, too. If you've got new listeners, it's good.
But he is right. It does
After
come
this
across...
episode, you can probably stop saying it and just start telling your stories.
That's what I said like 5 episodes ago. That's why she says I'm making fun of her.
So I finally started, today I'm the ghost whisperer, but I started saying, did you know that I'm a hospice nurse, as my little self-title for a few episodes there. Because I recognize Cameron is correct.
I also started putting former EMT. Did you know I was an EMT?
Oh, yeah.
So it's
and now what are you?
Huh?
Now what are you?
Pharmacy technician.
Oh, I thought you were a fortune teller swindler. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, that too. That's
same,
my real
same difference,
identity.
Or just kidding.
Drug dealer by day,
drug
fortune
dealer.
teller swindler by night.
So this came up also partially because Abby had some questions about. I talked about in this thing. I have already recorded a mini that I plan on releasing. That was the time that I couldn't sleep, so I recorded it, and Abby listened to it and had a lot of questions about, what did you mean this person should have been dead like before? Like, what did you mean by this person lived for way longer than they should have? What does that even mean? So this is part of the kind of explaining that too. So to start with, I want to say that I really did not understand what death and dying looked like. I really didn't get that when I worked in the hospital or did other acute care nursing type stuff. I knew what it looked like right immediately before a person died, like in those moments of death, after either something traumatic had happened to them and it was very sudden, or if they had been ill for a long time and they came to the hospital because they got sick and we were fighting tooth and nail to keep that person alive, but failed, So I knew what those things looked like, but I had no formal education or training in the death and dying process. And to be honest, most people, the majority of people who work in acute care have no concept, in my opinion, of what the death and dying process looks like. And they have whole teams in the hospital that are set up to be able to have those conversations about death and dying because they are specially trained to do that, and the rest of us in the hospital are not. We do not know.
You're talking about death and dying as in like a chronic issue that's deteriorating,
or like
not like an acute event where hit by a car and now they're dying. Somebody that you can actually talk to and coach about the death and dying process. Okay.
Right. Or even the families. If the families are advocating to aggressively treat something that the doctors have actually been able to say, no, this is a no-go prognosis. This is one that we are not going to be able to cure, which is rare, but does happen in the hospital. So acutely, sometimes there are things that cannot be cured, and the doctors are able to recognize that. And sometimes
No-go prognosis equals they're not going to live.
and the physicians are saying there is no benefit to doing any aggressive treatment from this point, and trying to get the family on board with that. Or and that could be acutely, I was hit by a car and now I'm brain dead. Or that could be most commonly, this is a chronic illness, you have cancer, you're at the end of the line, there is no further treatment we can provide to you that would actually benefit you at this point, that is actually going to increase the length of your life. So
It's interesting. It's interesting that we're talking about this subject because today, as we were driving on the freeway, the other side of the freeway was actually closed due to a fatality, and I believe that as we were driving by, I saw the body on the road still covered up. So it's just kind of interesting that on the day we're having this discussion, this whole thing, I witnessed this whole thing as we went by.
yeah,
You did too.
I didn't
But I don't.
see it.
I believe I actually saw the body that was on the. It was covered, but I believe it was.
Yeah.
Does
I'm
it
not
feel
surprised.
eerie? Like an eerie coincidence?
It was more kind of just an emotional thing, like to just kind of. It just kind of hit me like, whoa, somebody just died there.
I
Oh,
don't know
sure,
if we
yeah.
should edit
In the
this out, but,
moment.
Yeah,
that's called corpse sitting. They send like one of the chaser trucks or like one of the utility trucks up there to have somebody that's a paramedic that's trained to sit with the body until the coroner can show up.
Right, because they
So
can't
you're
pronounce in
probably
the
just
field.
seeing somebody wait until they can be officially declared dead.
Yeah.
But there's no treatment that's available.
Which is so interesting because as a hospice nurse, I can pronounce, and I don't need a second witness. In the hospital, I need 2 nurses. It required 2 nurses to pronounce a patient dead, or 1 physician. As a hospice nurse, it requires only 1 nurse, and they could be RN or LPN. So it's kind of interesting, the layers of that part too, like who can actually
that is
pronounce a
interesting.
person dead. So I wanted to say I didn't actually really know what the death and dying process was until I started working in hospice. And so there were things that in retrospect I think about now and I think, oh my God, that person was dying in front of me and I did not recognize it because I just thought XYZ thing was happening. So there are in my experience, I boiled it down, and other people may disagree, but I boiled it down to 3 main ways that people die. 1, they got hit by a car and bam, they died. Something really traumatic, or like they fell down some stairs and they got a ground level fall and then they had a brain bleed and then they went brain dead, or had a heart attack, had an aneurysm. Something really catastrophic happened all of a sudden and without any preparation, and boom, now they're dying and they've probably got days left. That's the one way that I've seen. The second way that I've seen is somebody has a chronic illness. They were born with cystic fibrosis. They have COPD that they've been dealing with for a lifetime. They have congestive heart failure, multiple sclerosis, cancer, some kind of kidney disease, even dementia counts as part of this. And they have known for maybe even decades that this is the disease that's going to kill them. Those ones are different. They go a little bit differently. Then there are a third way that I've seen people die, and we actually have a medical diagnosis for this. It is called failure to thrive. And people basically just sort of stop doing so good. They don't eat as much anymore. They sleep a little bit more than they used to. They're a little bit weaker and they just sort of wither away for no real good reason. And so when it happens like that and we can't really figure out what the heck changed, there's not really a disease process, they just sort of wither away, we call that failure to thrive. Typically happens in the elderly.
I was going to say, that's probably what we would categorize people who, for instance, have a spouse. Their spouse dies and that person is otherwise healthy, but all of a sudden, like a year later, they drop dead.
Yeah. And for no good reason.
Right.
Yeah.
They were
on paper, they were healthy.
I've heard that story a bunch of times. we had a family member who just recently, she was bedridden for years, and she was kind of on a, I don't know how much of her, she was bedridden for years, and her husband left town to go visit family members, and he died of a stroke or something like that. And we knew. I called it. I told my husband she's going to be dead in a month. Now that he's gone, that's it. She's going to let go. And sure enough, within a month, she died. And so that would be the failure to thrive, I think, where you just...
Yeah, I think that would count. There, So these are the three main ways. I just wanted to kind of identify them. I'm going to talk about chronic illness dying first because it's easier to see the progression. And with the traumatic death, you don't see that usually because it happened like that. It happened in just a moment, and a lot of this is very accelerated. Where in the chronic illness, there's a lot of stuff that you see. In the failure to thrive, it's very similar usually, but the way that families deal with it can be different sometimes. So, and what my personal spiritual opinion of what is happening to the failure to thrive people is very different from the chronic illness thing. So, the language and messaging that most people receive at the time of diagnosis is, and I'm not talking about cancer specifically. There are some diagnoses where the physicians have become exceptional at being able to talk honestly and realistically with people about what is happening. So cancer doctors, like oncologists specifically, are very, very good at saying, hey, this is the disease, and there's been so much research that they know an awful lot about your chances of surviving and the timeline of that survival and what the treatment is like. It's very, very good. They've got it down to a pretty tight science now, so they can be super honest with people. Like, hey, this is your diagnosis. You've got this particular type of cancer. Your prognosis is 50% chance of survival. So, we're going to do everything we can to keep you healthy. But that means the following treatments. And this can be painful. This can be hard to deal with. So it's a choice that you're going to have to make whether or not it is worth it to you for 50% or 30% or 20% survival rate, right? Like if it's a really high survival rate, like 90% survival, they may not have that same conversation. But if they know the prognosis is poor, and we do have options, there are things we can try, but your prognosis is poor, you may want to consider what you want your life to look like moving forward. Is it worth it to you to undergo all of this stress and pain and the trauma of these treatments for a potential survival rate of 20%? And if you can honestly say it's worth it, then let's do it. But you need to consider. So I feel like oncologists are really good at having those conversations, because most of the cancer patients I have met who've known for a long time have already had really good experiences. They're fully prepared. Their families are prepared. They have done all of their letters, and they've done their little mementos, and it's really poignant and really peaceful. They are the most peaceful, in my opinion, at time of death when they have these cancers that they've known about for a very long time. And the families are most at peace. It's actually quite beautiful. But most of the time, for patients with heart disease, COPD, some of these other, kidney disease is another one, where it doesn't necessarily, we don't really necessarily know exactly when that person's going to die because there's so many variables that go into it. The physician languaging is more like, hey, yeah, you've got this disease, but guess what? We're going to be able to keep you alive for forever. We've got this treatment. We've got these surgeries. There are these kinds of medications you can take. You can make these lifestyle changes. You could live decades, right? And so the messaging is, yeah, I've got this disease. It's going to make me sick, but as long as I take my medicine, I'm going to live forever. Kind of. I mean, not really. But there's this blasé sort of, meh, it's not really going to kill me. It's just something I'm going to have to deal with. When the reality is, yes, eventually, it probably is going to kill you one way or the other. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with having the conversation, you're sick, but if we do these things, we can keep you alive. It would be kind of nice, however, if doctors, and it has to be doctors because only doctors can diagnose, were better about having conversations about, it might be a good idea to think about a living will, a medical power of attorney. Not that you necessarily need that right now, but in the future you might need that. So it might be a good idea to think about those kinds of things. Or as people are getting closer to the end stages of these diseases, being honest and saying, hey, you're getting closer to the end stage. We're doing all of this treatment. Have you considered what you want your end of life to look like? Not saying that that's happening in the next several years, but it could. Being really honest and opening that door. What I see happening is a lot of families have never had those conversations before, and so they seem like they're taken really off guard when the disease finally kills their family member.
So that's when you get that conversation where they're like, you're going to make it better, right? Everything's going to be okay. And you kind of got to, I don't think so, but you got to put it lightly and figure out how to actually get the message across still.
And it's a hard conversation to have. Doctors don't want to be that guy. Doctors want to be the hero. They want to save your life. What were you going to say?
I had a brain aneurysm. Brain aneurysm victim. Yeah.
Oh.
She was out with her No.
Jesus.
Cameron.
Oh my God.
I had a brain aneurysm patient, and the family was totally caught off guard. They were out at dinner with friends the night before, and just, she's gonna be all right. Yeah,
Dude, brain aneurysms do that, though.
horrifying.
I mean,
Sometimes the thing
to
is,
sell us our life
ahead.
insurance. It was, my son-in-law actually was like a really healthy, athletic, lean, and he was playing soccer with friends, being active, and dropped dead on the field. I mean, yeah. So living wills are always a great idea, but especially if you have a disease or something that is, for instance, the leading cause of death in America, like it's probably a great idea to get your estate in order at a young age. I think a lot of people just get too bummed out about it or something.
well, and let me clarify. A living will is different than a will. A living will is if something happens to me and I am in the hospital and the doctor is saying that I have a prognosis that cannot be, that I have a life-ending prognosis. I do not want you to give me tube feeds. I do not want chest compressions. I do not want to be kept alive. Like you can actually make it as complicated as you want about how and when you want people to stop fighting for you. And those living wills have to be honored. It's when you have no living will and a power of attorney that someone else can just willy-nilly make decisions for you, even reversing your do not resuscitate. Like if you choose not to be a DNR, or I'm sorry, if you are a person who has chosen to be a DNR and for some reason you are incapacitated, family can reverse that if they're the power of attorney. And it's terrible. It is really awful to see that. But a living will in place is a lot harder to have family. It can't be reversed. Like a living will cannot be reversed. You made it when you were of sound mind and you were able to make those decisions for yourself. Those documents are notarized most often. So that is like a legal document. So a living will is yes, definitely have your estate in order too. But a living will is really important if you have a very clear idea of the way you do or do not want to die.
I do feel like we're getting off topic here, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this part of your
We weren't
outline?
talking about legal
No, it's part of it.
jargon.
I would like it if doctors sort of led that a little bit. Like I understand not wanting to be a Debbie Downer and be like, hey, this is going to kill you someday. Yeah. Yes, we can keep you alive with these following treatments, but it might be a good idea to look into doing a living will.
Well,
just in
my
case
point
something
was
happens to
sudden and unexpected events can happen, and I was just trying to relate that to what you were saying, where they know they have that time. They can talk to the patients. They can talk to the family, and how that's actually really great work.
Yes.
And it's so important.
It's so
'Cause
important.
I've seen the opposite, where they had no time, no idea anything was wrong.
I think it makes a big difference, and we will talk about that. So the next point I wanted to talk about is it's the roller coaster of wellness and illness. I can't take credit for this. Actually, a palliative physician who worked in the hospital I used to work with was the first person I ever heard talk about this. And I texted you guys all a picture of this. So the roller coaster of wellness and illness is when you get a diagnosis.
That's what that little sketch was.
You start out pretty healthy, and then you've got a little dip where you're sick for a little bit, and then you're healthy again, and you're healthy for a good long while, and then you have a little dip, and you're sick again, and then you get healthy for a little bit. But the thing about the roller coaster is those healthy periods are never quite as good as they were before, and they're shorter. And those illness periods are always a little bit longer and a little bit sicker until it
Listeners,
goes.
what she's showing us right now resembles like when you see a downturn in the stock market. There's
Oh, yeah.
always a big dip down and then a little dip up and then down and then up and down and up, but it's still going in an overall long-term downward trend. And then it does the same exact thing when it's on an upward trend, the economic cycle. So this is what'd you call this?
I
It's a
have
bear
called
market
it
of life.
the roller coaster of wellness and illness, but I don't. There probably is a real name for it, and I just don't know it, to be honest. I'm sure it's been talked about before. So this roller coaster, I think, has an unfortunate impact of making people feel like, yes, my loved one is sick right now, but they're going to bounce back. They've always bounced back, and it slowly acclimates people to normalizing their loved one's illness and not
A
really
false
being
hope.
able. Huh?
Like a false hope, yeah.
Kind of, yeah. So they internally normalize, my loved one is sick. They just live like this. This is just how they are, because it's been so long and it happened so slowly, and it was such a insidious, bouncing little roller coaster that they kind of forgot what it looked like when their loved one was perfectly healthy. And it's really, really hard to see that this is the end, because they always bounced back before. This is the number one hurdle that we face with families who are dealing with a loved one who is dying from a chronic disease that didn't really have good conversations about what the end should look like, because
Wow.
they are in deep denial, and they have, in my opinion, a good reason for their denial. They have seen it for years. My loved one gets sick, then they get better. My loved one gets sick, and then they get better. But they don't understand that it is never quite as good as it was before. They don't understand. No one has ever talked to them about this in these terms before. If you talk to them about it later, is to try to, help them with their denial, then in retrospect, they look back at it and they're like, oh yeah, that does make sense. Actually, I do see that. But if somebody's not there to point it out to them, they can't see it. It's kind of like when jaundice patients don't know that they've turned bright yellow. Is anybody, like a person will be
Yeah.
living with jaundice and liver disease for a really long time, and maybe they're kind of a homebody, and they look in the mirror, and every day they get a little bit more yellow, but they don't see it because it happens so slow, until one day they leave the house and their friend is like, Jesus Christ, why are your eyes yellow? What the fuck happened to you? It's jaundice, and they didn't know because it happened so slow. So it's kind of like that. Like, you can get used to something, and things can happen so slowly that you don't really see the changes until somebody else can point it out to you. Moving on. All right, so we've got this roller coaster. Now they're going through the roller coaster, and then all of a sudden, one day, your loved one who has got this disease says, Uncle Jimmy came, and they were there at the end of the bed, and they were talking to me, and we had this whole conversation. It was really nice to see Uncle Jimmy. And then as a healthcare provider, I'm like, oh, your brother, Uncle Jimmy came and visited you. That's so cool. And then a family member says, Uncle Jimmy died like a decade ago. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. That is actually so common. These deathbed or these ghostly visitors, it is so common, and it happens like clockwork at a certain time in the death process. It is actually part of the education process when we're training new hospice nurses. It is just an accepted symptom of the end of life process. And when that is happening, we know that our patient is down to months, possibly weeks of life left. Sometimes this happens a little bit later. I've seen it happen up to, a couple of days before death. But when they are still in the home setting and they're still somewhat with it and maybe getting around a little bit, maybe they're still eating a little bit, maybe they seem okay, but they're kind of, they're getting a little bit weaker. Once they start seeing this shit, then I know, okay, it's coming. And I start trying to prepare the families, because I'm lucky enough that I did field nursing, so I was able to see this a lot.
Do you explain that to the families?
Yes.
Okay, this is actually part of our training. We know that when this happens. Okay. That's interesting.
What's really fun is how accepted it is, and it is written into the documentation, like it's written into our training, like this is what happens. But like what's kind of cool is they avoid talking about is it real or not. They just say the patient will say that they are seeing a deceased loved one. They will have visitors that nobody else can see. We just
keep
talk
it
about it.
objective. Yeah.
It's just kind of cool. And the first time that I got training from my company about this and they were talking about it so openly, it's like, fucking love this job. This is so cool. It's just like, and everybody knows that it happens because objectively you can't deny that it is happening. The argument would be, what is happening?
Yeah,
What
to
we know
ignore
is-
would be to ignore a symptom.
Yes, would be to ignore something that can help you define the timeline. You know, like this is a really, really good indicator for a person's timeline. Like how much time do they have left? Months. You're down to a couple of months at this point.
So the speculation of this entire group is that they're really seeing it?
Mine is.
I think so.
I 100% think they are really seeing family members.
Yeah, I believe
No
that
doubt.
too.
Yeah.
Have you ever managed to see one at the same time as the patient, Mandy, in real time?
No,
Mm.
not so far anyway. I have not.
Here's the other question. Do we think that it's actually a family member or something else preying on that energy?
I got some stories. You want to hear some stories? So
What if
I
it's
had
the
this
Reaper?
I had this super cute little old man patient who was just absolutely adorable. I really loved him. And he was just a funny little guy. So he just like would tell these off the wall things. Like one time we had to send him to respite and I went to go visit him at the respite place because he was still my patient. So respite is when the caregiver needs a break because they are burned out and overwhelmed. So you send them to a facility for 5 days. Insurance pays for that. And then they get to come home. So like if the caregiver needed a surgery or was sick or had to go to a wedding or just needed a break, then we would do respite, right? But they still need their hospice nurse. So the hospice nurse visits them wherever they are. So he was one time at this respite place and I was like, how's it going? He goes, there's some good looking women here. I'm fine. Okay. And this is the guy who barely
This
spoke.
is the old guy.
Yeah. This is the old guy. He like barely could put together more than 3 words at a time. So the fact that he gave me that whole sentence and he was all bright-eyed and happy, I was like, all right, he's living his best life. Lenny's fine.
Nice.
So he is not
Excellent.
worried about this respite stay. So again, this is a guy who could not put a whole lot of words together because he had some dementia along with his cardiovascular disease. Like he had a lot of stuff going on. But then one day I was like, hey, how's it going at night? We were just talking about sleep. And he goes, well, I can't sleep at night because the church people keep coming in. I was like, what? What do you mean the church people keep coming in? He goes, they just come in and they just stare at me. I don't know what they're doing. What do you mean? What do you mean they're staring at you? He goes, well, they come in. And I was like, how do you know they're church people? He's like, well, because they're dressed really nice. I was like, oh, okay. And I was
Sunday
like,
best.
yeah, I was like, yes, in their Sunday best. And he goes, they're just there and they just kind of look at me. I'm like, okay, well, how do you feel about that? He goes, it's fine. Okay.
Wish they would leave me alone and let me sleep.
Pretty much. So he was like, you know, they're not doing anything. So then I was like, well, that's crazy. But then he told me also, he goes, you know, the weirdest thing is they've got this cat dressed in a tuxedo and a top hat. That cat's crazy. I was like, okay. So
A cat
It
in a
do be weird.
tuxedo?
yeah, I was
Cats
like,
in
what
its
is
best too.
I was like, what does the cat do? He goes, well, I don't know what he does. He's just there. I'm like, okay. So, but I just thought that was interesting because then I have also had another patient, and this was a patient who had pretty severe dementia. She lived at home with her family. She was very lucky. The family had a situation where they could take care of her in the home, and because dementia patients are very hard to take care of, especially at the end of life. So she one day we were talking, and the daughter-in-law who took care of her was like, you know, she's been yelling, and it's just been really distracting because she'll just start yelling in the middle of the night, and I never really know what's going on. So I asked her, I said, what's going on? What are you yelling about? She goes, and she was Spanish speaking. She goes, mijo, these pendejos, they're like these bitches, basically. They're up in the attic, they're making all this noise, and they're just loafing around, the lazy little bastards. And I was like, what? She goes, you know, they could come and they could visit, but they need to pay rent. It's not okay.
That's a good lady.
That's
Like,
funny.
oh, so you're just mad that the people in the attic are lazy and are not paying your rent. Well, yeah, wouldn't you be mad? I'm like, yeah, I guess I'd be mad too. So that was a really fun experience. Like, so she was seeing people living in the attic, and she really didn't have much to say about who they were or whatever, but her general attitude made me feel like they might be family, because she was mad about these late, like she was very familiar in her conversation about them. And then
That's cool.
yeah. And then lastly, I had a patient who had Parkinson's, and she's really interesting. We're going to talk about her a few more times. She was in bed one day and we were talking. She was completely cogent, like totally 100% logical and with it. She had a very sharp intellect. She was one of my favorite patients to visit because she had a really sneaky personality where she would sneak in little zingers, like little jokes that I wouldn't get right away because I don't know, I guess maybe I'm slow. But she was very fast too, is the point I want to get. She was very smart. So she'd make little jokes and stuff and I'd like start talking. Oh yeah. And then I'd be like, oh,
Then
you were
process.
joking. Like, oh,
That happens to me all the time.
Right.
So she was one of those people, like super smart, right? Well, at the end, she started to tell me about this man who started to visit her. He was wearing a top hat. And I said, do you recognize him? Do you know who he is? Well, no, he just comes in and he walks and he just looks at me. I don't really know what he's doing. He's just there. I said, how do you feel? Are you scared? Well, no, not really. I just wish he wouldn't come. I just, it is a little distracting and I'd rather not see him. I was like, oh, okay. Well, as long as you're not scared, I guess it's okay. And I was like, what do you think he is? And she was like, I don't know. I mean, it's probably hallucination, but it's just very strange. I said, okay. All right. And we kind of left it at that. So.
Well, here's an important distinction here. When people see the Hat Man day to day or typically see them at night, you have that aura of fear. The closer he gets, the more that vibration that you feel. They don't seem to be experiencing that inert fear of this thing.
Maybe they are.
She didn't
though.
like him.
She wasn't super into him, but he didn't bother her that much. Like she was leaning more towards indifference, but more kind of like, I wish he wasn't here kind of thing. But Cameron, to your point, that is an interesting point that I hadn't put together before, because my next point is terminal agitation. So agitation in general medically is when a patient is like losing their mind and cannot be redirected, and they are maybe ill and they're trying to get out of bed, but they're not strong enough to support their own weight. So they're like constantly doing stuff. They're agitated, ripping out IVs. Like you can't talk to them logically about what's going on. They are just completely freaking out and losing their minds. They might be violent. They might be combative. They might be self-harming and not really mean to. It's a bad situation. And in the hospital, I saw this all the time. And I believe in retrospect that in a lot of those cases, I was seeing a warning sign that this patient was dying. And I didn't understand that because I had not been taught. I had not received the training and I didn't have the experience that I have now. But terminal agitation typically happens within weeks to days of a person dying.
Well, we saw that a lot in oxygen-deprived patients as well. COPD, if they're starting to get a little bit lower in oxygen, they start freaking out.
Yeah.
Like a internal poison response of the carbon.
Yeah. And it is, I think, those COPD patients that you're seeing do that are getting much closer to their end of life. And in, like I've said, in the hospice setting, usually these people are gone in a matter of 3 weeks or less, 2 weeks or less, sometimes days.
Have you seen this affect the families of patients? Like the families actually have that. Like, so I'm just going to give a personal example. When my mom passed away, the night before, my dad was with her, and then he had, we believe it was just a panic attack where his blood pressure just spiked, and he went to the hospital. And then it was that morning that my mom actually passed away. So it was like she...
An empathic response.
Sent him away so she could not have any of her family around when she actually passed. Because she was, my mom was also, kind of a private person. But that was just an interesting thing. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
You know how they did that research on twins back in World War II? There is a response between biological
I think he's talking about
similars.
Nazis.
Yeah.
Oh.
Nazis did a lot of research on twins. In fact, in Argentina, there's this town that has the highest per capita twin ratio.
Wow.
Because that scientist fled to that town and continued his research.
I've heard of that.
What they found is pain, fear, emotional responses, if you separate the twins, a lot of times that other twin will still feel it. And I think that isn't strictly tied to twins. So
Yeah.
I think she might have felt something coming on, and he responded to it empathically.
Well, it's interesting because her whole process, she had brain cancer, and it got to a point to where when the cancer came back the second time, it was so deep in her brain that they really couldn't do anything about it. They tried some experimental radiation, but it burned her throat, so she couldn't swallow any longer.
Oh no.
And basically, the doctor came to her and said, "We can't do anything for you." And that was when she basically passed away from failure to thrive, because she just stopped. She couldn't talk. She stopped talking. She stopped interacting with people. She basically was asleep the whole time, and the only time she would wake up was when her throat was in pain, and they would just do a morphine liquid into her throat so she could just basically sleep. And then when she actually passed, there was a hospice nurse there with her, because she was actually in a facility. That when she actually passed, so she wasn't ever like awake and coherent and talked and talk about seeing family members or anything. She just, the thing that happened that was weird was, my dad had this panic attack, basically went to the hospital to make sure he was okay, and then she passed away. So
I'm really sorry, JT. To your point, that is possible. I'll pay more attention. Usually, honestly, I haven't put that together before, but it could be. Usually, the families are in just a high state of anxiety and agitation themselves, but I have always attributed that to the overwhelm of trying to take care of someone who is this kind of agitated. It is possible that there's like some kind of symbiotic, that they feel it too, maybe, and that's part of what's leading to their overwhelm and their
And
frazzlement.
I wouldn't say that it was always a literal response. I think it's just like an emotional, physiological response to whatever's going on over there.
Yeah.
So that's why I think he had a response to what was happening or about to happen to her. It's not that he felt it, it's that he felt something changing.
Interesting.
I will say, in terminal agitation, that same patient, that Parkinson's patient that I told you about, this is where I developed this theory, was in talking with her, and I've watched it play out over and over and over again with other patients since her. She had lost strength in her legs. Like, the Parkinson is a progressive disease where eventually you lose strength, like you become very weak and you can't walk anymore. She had been bedbound for a couple of months at this point, and then all of a sudden, one day, she tried to get out of bed and she fell and she hurt herself. And when I came to see her after that, I was like, "What happened? Why did you do that? You know your limitations." She said, "I know." I said, "You, like, do you feel like you can walk?" "Well, no, I know that I can't walk." "Do you understand what's going to happen if you get out of bed?" "Well, yes, I know I'm going to fall. That's what just happened." I said, "Okay, so clearly you're still with it with me. Like, you're still cogent. You still understand. So help me understand, why did you get out of bed? If you know that you're too weak and you know that you're going to fall and hurt yourself, why did you do it?" She said, "Honestly, I don't know. I needed to get out of this bed. I needed to get out. It was a compulsion that I couldn't fight." And
Fight or flight.
in that moment, see, here's the spiritual theory. In that moment, it made me think, and I've had this reinforced, so I have this bias now. This is what I think, and it's reinforced ever since. Something is calling her soul out of her body, but the soul hasn't figured out yet how to separate from the body. So it results in people trying to leave physically. But what's actually happening is they're trying to separate their soul from the body and leave the body. This is important because, at least in the culture of where I work, this is usually how we talk about it. They can't figure out how to leave. What we mean is, they can't figure out how to get out of their body. Their soul is trying to escape. So we talk about that in people who are surpassing our expectation of when they might die, and we think it's because they're confused, or sometimes we just think that they're stubborn. We just say they're stubborn, they're not ready to go. But you can almost, I don't know what it is, but we can tell the difference somehow. Like, we've decided that we know what the difference is, which I guess because we don't actually know, but we all sort of are on the same page with each other about what's happening with the patient if they're not dying in the timeline that we expect, either because we think that they can't figure it out, like they're having trouble separating, they're having trouble figuring out how to leave, or if they're just a kind of a stubborn person and they're just not really ready to leave. Like, we can kind of
It's
tell,
weird.
and I've heard, it's not just me, I've heard other nurses use this kind of language, not just nurses, social workers, chaplains, the aides. So my
It
personal
makes
theory,
me think of like a molting
yeah,
animal or a snake. Like
like
you have to like physically work,
your way out.
wriggle out of the thing. Wow.
And my partner, she just retired, but she used to call it the work. Right now they're doing the work, in the work of dying, but the work to separate out of their body. So even nurses with lots of different, like, there's a lot of different religious beliefs where I work. We all are pretty much on the same page about that. It feels like I have yet to meet anybody who thinks of it in different terms. So in my opinion, terminal agitation is when they're first getting that call. It's time to go home. It's time to go. And go home is another term we use because it's really non-religious. It's non-denominational. It fits whatever you believe in. It's time to go, but they haven't quite done the work or finished the work to get out. So that's particularly why I wanted to talk about terminal agitation, because it is so interesting and because of what we spiritually think is happening to the person. The other thing that sort of backs this up is there is like a symbolic language of dying that the patients use, and us as nurses and hospice workers have to figure out. Very recently, we just had a patient who kept saying, I got to get this furniture out. I got to get the furniture out. I have to get it out. We have to go. We're moving. We got to get out of here. And my counterpart, who was day shift, was giving me a report and telling me that she was obsessing about the furniture. And I said, she goes, she thinks she's moving. I said, well, if you think about it, in a manner of speaking, she is moving. She goes, oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. There is this language that we hear, some variation of, I have to go. I'm late to the train station. People are waiting for me. I need to catch my flight. I want to go fishing. Do you think that so-and-so dead family member will wait for me? You know, I've got goosebumps. Like, there's all manner of ways that I've heard people sort of talking about this, I have an appointment, I need to go kind of thing. I'm moving out, whatever. That is also something which is documented, and part of our training is to look for some of that symbolic language that kind of gives you an idea. At that point, when they're using language like that, you're down to like days. You're down to days at this point. When they're talking about, I'm trying to move, like, they're basically saying, I'm somewhere inside, I need to go. Even if they're totally confused, they are still able to kind of convey that in a sort of language that is making sense to whatever's happening in their brain in that moment. There is some part of them that understands. So then let's say they've done all of these things. Then we're in the pre-active and active phase of dying is something that nurses will talk about. Pre-active phase, a lot of this stuff can happen in the pre-active phase that we've just talked about. But at this point, the person usually, not in every case, is minimally responsive. They might wake up and say something like once an hour, maybe less often. They might only respond to pain. They're usually in a lot of pain. They have no appetite. They usually can't swallow at this point. They start to have some wet sounding breathing, and they're very, very, very weak. And for a lot of people, whether it was failure to thrive or a chronic illness, then we will see both of these in both of these situations. And a lot of times, like, especially for terminal agitation, we have to medicate really ridiculously to get them calm again. I think for a lot of families, they're confused and they think it's the medicine that has caused their family member to go into the pre-active phase. The pre-active phase was always coming, with or without the medicine. The medicine just helped us get them calm and helped us manage their symptoms of pain and anxiety. But for family members, they see us giving these crazy doses and they think that that's the reason their family member's dying, when it's actually the opposite. That's actually not true. And then we get into the active phase in dying. Okay, so this is really important for some of the stories we talked about. Usually completely unresponsive. They usually feel crazy hot to the touch. They may or may not actually register as having a fever. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but they feel really hot to touch. It's weird. I don't know why the ones who feel so hot don't register as having a fever, but they don't. They have what's called mottling. So fingers and toes will turn purple, sometimes black, and they'll get really weird looking, very discolored. They'll have what we call the death rattle, where it's this really gurgly sounding noise as they breathe, and it can be very hard for family members to hear because they feel like the death rattle itself is painful or distressing for the patient, but at that point the patient is beyond that. It's more distressing for family than it is for the patient. There may be what we call in the medical field guppy breathing. So they're breathing like, have you ever seen a kid who's been crying for a super long time and then they're like trying to like recover themselves and it's kind of almost like a hiccup? That's guppy breathing.
It's like the diaphragm spasming or something.
Yeah, so they have that, and that is, I think, actually what it really is, because they stop breathing with the normal muscles because they're too weak, and then they start using what we call accessory muscles, so the sides of the ribs and the diaphragm, which are not usually the primary modes of breathing. And they become so weak, I think, that they start doing this diaphragmatic breathing, and the weaker they get, the more you see kind of this more like reflexive looking thing. It's the struggle, it's the labor of breathing. And it's just a sign about how close they are. Usually people who are guppy breathing, we're down to minutes to hours. Apnea is another thing that happens. And I have seen patients apneic up to 40 seconds per minute. So for 40 straight seconds, they did not take a breath. And then they might breathe once or twice. And then they have another 30 or 40 seconds of apnea. Those are the patients that we usually think are down to minutes. They might die in seconds. But every now and then, live for weeks, and I don't know how. I don't know how they do that. It's really
that's
weird.
Interesting you talk about that too, because I had a friend that passed just earlier this year, and he was at home sleeping, and that's exactly what was happening, but he still lived for a couple more weeks. I just was there kind of helping his wife, as she's going through this process, and she was still kind of in denial about it a little bit. But when he was sleeping, you could hear that apnea, but you could also hear that same breathing you were talking about, the guttural,
death rattle.
The death rattle. Yeah. But it still took him like 2 weeks to go after that.
Yeah. And those are the ones that confound us. Those are the ones that the nurses are like, he can't figure it out, or there's some reason why he won't let go, or he's being stubborn. Those are the ones where we sort of start to postulate theories about why this patient is still around when physiologically they shouldn't. Huh?
The active phase of dying is what in the timeline then?
Usually we're talking about days.
Can I throw
3-4 days.
That?
What's up?
That makes sense.
I think that with this case, that the one I just talked about, the friend, I think it was after you visited and talked with the wife about him being about ready to pass, when she finally was able to let go of him, and then he was able to finally pass.
Oh my God, I just got chills. Holy shit.
That happens a lot, I think. And I think that's an important thing to think about. And I had a whole thing about why it's so important to have your end of life plan and really be open and honest about what you want. Because sometimes people hold on because they feel selfish for wanting to finally just let go. They feel like, I can't let go because such and such family member needs me. They would be too sad. And I do think that happens more than we realize. So it's also important for family to be able to say, hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, loved person, I love you so much and I'm going to miss you so much, but it's okay. Like, that doesn't happen every time. And sometimes it's just too hard because it happens so fast. It's hard to be able to let go like that.
Yeah.
So
I have another question for you too.
Go ahead.
A lot of times with some of these patients that have these chronic illnesses, they'll be really, really bad, and then they'll just like all of a sudden kind of wake up one day.
I have that in my outline. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Continue. What's your question?
Well, my question is have you seen that?
Yes.
where like they're like awake, they're coherent, they talk to everybody, and then the next day they die.
Yes. We call that the end of life rally. And we warn family members when it's happening, because sometimes family members say, they got better. We don't need hospice anymore. They're going to live forever. Yay. They beat the disease. And we have to say, oh, whoa. Maybe. However, more likely, this is just a rally. And we have to explain that sometimes patients will all of a sudden and without any expectation, without any reason, be completely coherent. Grandpa, who had dementia for 10 years, will suddenly wake up and be coherent and remember his family, something like that. Or they had cancer and they were sleeping 23 hours a day. And then they sort of weren't waking up at all for several days. They hadn't eaten, and everybody expects them to die. And then they wake up and they have conversations. I actually just recently saw it with a patient we have in the unit. Expected her to die. And then her son came in the room. Like, I believed she was dying in minutes because she had very long periods of apnea. She was at end stage dementia, hadn't eaten for more than a week because she had such a bad swallow. And the family had said she wouldn't want to have tube feedings. She just wouldn't. So we were trying to promote comfort, right? So really thought that she was at the end. Her son came. This woman, who had not opened her eyes for days, the entire time we had her in the unit, had not opened her eyes, had not made anything coherent, definitely wasn't making eye contact. All of a sudden opens her eyes and has this beatific look on her face. She's making direct eye contact with her son, and she looks so happy. So happy. She is looking at him and she is smiling. He's holding her hand and he's like crying. I'm like, holy shit. And I told the patient's son's wife, like, she hasn't done this. This is a gift right here. This is a rally.
Mhm. And don't let it fool you.
For him. More like, appreciate the gift that this is. She just
Yeah.
woke up for him, and she didn't wake up for anybody else. And his wife started crying a little bit when I told her
Well,
that. She's like,
appreciate, but also I assume that you told them, like, look, this is amazing. Appreciate it. This isn't representative of how she's doing, though.
yes,
This is your chance.
this is your
Yeah.
chance. Say what you need to say. And that's what I think.
Oh my
On
God.
some level, I do think that's what the rally is. It's like the one last huzzah. Somehow the soul knows somebody's got something they need to say, either the patient themselves or the patient's family. Let's present that opportunity. And so that's the end of life rally. And it does happen. And it's something that we have to be prepared for, and we have to educate families about sometimes, because they can send the wrong message. They cannot understand what it is. So that's mostly, I had some other stuff to talk about, like what post-mortem care. That's really not super important. I think one thing, and this might only be me. Actually, no, I don't believe it is just me. It has come up in conversation with every person that I've worked with so far, because I don't have a partner right now. So I get resource nurses and nurses who pick up extra shifts. So I'm always working with a different person now. People even who were hardcore skeptics have said, I was a skeptic, then I started working for hospice, and I've seen too many things. I now believe in ghosts. And will tell me stories about stuff that they've seen. So all of us in this work, I have yet to meet a person who hasn't had some experience working in hospice where they saw something that was explainable.
Damn.
And then the other thing is, myself and the partner that I have an aide that I work with, my partner, we work together all the time. We're a team. She and I both have reported to each other that we can feel when the soul is still around sometimes. I do think it's fairly common for the soul to stick around for a few hours, maybe even a few days, until they can finally figure out the next piece of the moving on and leaving. And it is a very common nursing, it's nursing folklore, it's a nursing belief that after a person has died, you need to open up the windows or the doors so the soul can get out. And
I thought I was weird.
No. So, and working at the hospital that I used to work at has these windows that are bolted shut and can't be opened. And the old school nurses used to complain all the time about that. Like, this is a problem. This is why this building is the way that it is. We need to be able to open the doors, but we can't. We need to be able to open the windows, but we can't. Like, it was a complaint. Like, we can't let the souls out. The souls are getting stuck. It was kind of what the nurses believe, which I think is really interesting. I have decided, you know what? It's not going to hurt anybody. So I'm going to go ahead and open these doors.
When saging, it's important to leave the windows open.
That's
I was
true.
gonna say.
That's true, because you got to let some avenue for the spirit to get out. So I
A
had some other
Catholic
stuff.
friend of mine.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No,
It's
go ahead.
a tangent. A Catholic friend of mine was very clear about how you have to create a clear path for the entities to leave in saging or whatever.
Or else you just piss them off more because now they're frantic to get out and they can't.
Yeah, that's a good point, Cameron.
Well, a correlation, I think, or something that just popped up in my mind is when there's people that see loved ones.
Oh yes,
Do they
after death?
hang after like do they hang? Oh, okay. So what I'm saying is, a person that's dying, when they start to see other beings, or they start talking about people that they see, do those spirits hang around after, or do they have family that is there to guide them out?
Obviously we
I've
can't
heard stories.
prove anything. My general sense and what I've heard from others is those people who are lucky enough to have ghostly visitation, because it doesn't happen in every case, those family members are there to help show them the way. And so the family members who are visiting don't stay. I've never had the sense that those spirits or entities stay. They're there
more
for
than
a
one
purpose.
story I've heard. Those family members show up with the loved one that has recently deceased to comfort the families that are still
Oh, that's
in like a dream state or what have you. Just like, hey, everything's fine.
So this is a family member's family member. So their mother was very skeptical. We're talking about the 1940s or 50s. When did World War II happen? 1940s?
Yeah.
Okay. So this woman was in her early 20s, and this is my husband's grandmother. She was super skeptical, but she had a friend whose husband was in the war, and the friend called the grandmother over to be like, hey, I need you to come over here. So the grandmother, right, and at the time she's in her 20s, she goes over and she's like, what's going on? Are you okay? And she says, my husband is dead. He just came and he told me he is crashed in the ocean. Come look at the puddle in my bedroom on the floor. And so sure enough, grandma, who's not a grandma at the time, goes in and looks and sees the puddle. The friend explains, I just saw him soaking wet, standing at the end of the bed, and said, oh my God, you're dead, aren't you? And he said, yes. I know. Isn't that a wild story?
Oh my God.
And that's how she learned the news that her husband was dead before anybody even came to tell her.
That is crazy, Abby. What a cool story.
Wild.
Wow.
Wild. That is a great story to end the episode on. That is a badass story, Abby. So that's your husband's
It didn't look it. I'm really
grandmother.
bad at reactions, but I did also get goosebumps.
Did you?
I saw you reacting. You were squirming.
I was like, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's my husband's grandmother's best friend at the time.
So it was the best
her
friend who
husband.
saw her husband. Holy shit.
Yep.
Holy God. That's
Yep.
wild. And how sad, but at least he came to say
Yeah.
goodbye.
Yeah.
Dang. Anyway, so amazing story, and I hope that this helped answer some questions that I have kind of gotten from some of you individually. And I hope that helps educate people out there who maybe have sick family members. I think the most important takeaway that I want is that if you are fighting to the bitter end and you are in a fight or flight response, it is really hard to be present in the moment and enjoy the days you've got. So I think that for me, having some death positivity, the impact of that, and really being open to and accepting of the fact that, yes, I'm going to die someday, is that you are less interested in fighting the fight and more interested in enjoying the moments you have. And that is the difference that I've seen between the families who are in denial to the bitter end and fighting to keep their loved one alive, and the ones who are accepting and are okay with a peaceful death. The ones who are okay with it and have the peaceful death seem to have a better, and maybe that's objective, but seem to have better moments, higher quality moments with their loved ones. Whereas the ones who are fighting seem to be stressed out the whole time and
This
caught
moment
in their
doesn't
minds.
matter because I'm 100% going to have more moments after this.
Mm.
And so they glaze over.
Exactly, Cameron. That's such a good way to say it. So I hope that those of you who are out there think about it and really consider, what do I want the end of my life to look like? I don't think that has to be morbid. And in fact, I think there's a lot of good that can come from accepting the fact that you're going to die someday. Anyway, that's it. So thank you, murderers. Thank you,
Good
Abby,
episode.
JP, and Cameron. I hope we
Thank you,
enjoyed
Mandy.
this. All right. Goodbye, everybody. See you for the next
This is-
episode. Oh, yeah.
This
That
has
was
been
way out of
another
sync.
episode of
The
Wandering
Crow.
Crow. What were you saying?
Beat you.